or politically, you might say, or culturally, you might say. But it's a manipulation where the manipulator also gets stuck in it. Rumi says, listen to this story. He says there was a mother, symbolizing all the mothers, who, to make her son behave, would always tell him, if you don't listen to what I'm saying, there's a boogeyman, there's a boogeyman. So now the child grows up, but now is very scared of the boogeyman. And the mother tries to think of a way she can make him not be scared of the boogeyman. She said, next time you see the boogeyman, I'm your mother, I know you listen to me, just go right through the boogeyman. And guess what? The boogeyman will disappear, become obliterated. But the son says, but mother, what if the boogeyman's mother tells him the same thing? Boogeymen have mothers too, Rumi says that's a great story for us to meditate on, about the manipulation of fear. So my friends, all these stories are told to let us know that unless we transform the institution, just as the real work is to transform ourselves as a human being, and the Quran is very clear about the stages, there are 3 stages, unless you do that, it will really rule our lives in a manipulative, convenient, inconvenient, power-hungry way. And the real work for us is, as members of the institution, whether a layperson or the priest, all of us have to continue to do this inner work of transforming the ego and opening up the heart, without which one cannot really, genuinely, authentically engage in interfaith spirituality. So that is the main obstacle that is given in the traditions as being the main barrier. The other obstacles is also many. One, for example, if we in our traditions, I as a Muslim, I am not focusing on that or explaining or pointing out or talking about that which is awkward in my tradition. If I just talk about only the commonalities, how everything is wonderful, everything is beautiful, and gloss over any awkwardness in my own tradition, or you in your tradition, unless I give myself permission to be vulnerable. You cannot create community, authentic community, unless we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, to speak the truth. Like Gandhi said, every single religion has truths and untruths. Of course, there are awkward verses in the Quran. And which ones we choose also depends on our intention. What is my intention? Today, everybody is a weekend expert on the Quran. Which verse you choose depends on your intention. Like Rumi says, a bee and a wasp, they drink from the same flower. One produces nectar, the other one produces a sting. What is your intention? On Friday night, I was talking about, I think I hinted at that, the Quran talks so beautifully about Christians and Jews. Jesus is a very highly revered, special prophet. And I mean special prophet in the Quran. Even though the Quran says to Muhammad, make no distinction between the prophets, Jesus is highly, highly revered. Abraham is called the first Muslim. They're beautiful verses. It doesn't matter who you are, what religion you are. But there's also a verse which says, take not the Jews or Christians as your friends, for they're friends and protectors of one another. So the extreme right-wing Muslims, they take that particular verse and say, the Quran says that. But you see, we also have to be fair. this particular verse is part of a particular specific historical event, a particular battle, where it is said the Jews and the Christians had a treaty with the Muslims and they reneged on that. And that's when the verse came. So it is a specific, historically attached, contextual verse. Because if you go down just about a few verses down, comes that universal verse. That famous verse which says, it doesn't matter if you are a Muslim or a Jew or a Christian or a Sabian. What takes you to heaven is having faith in God, a belief in the last day of judgment, but most important of all, in doing righteous deeds. This verse, righteous deeds, that is what really determines your place in heaven, occurs again and again and again and again. So we have to be honest about these verses. We have to say, even if you explain the historical circumstances, it's still an awkward verse. One more point. Why there's an obstacle to interspirituality. We know so little of the other's religion, and yet we make such strong judgments. I can tell you as a Muslim, when I these days say the word jihad, it produces justifiably a lot of fear in you. Because maybe your understanding of Islam is through Fox News or some other channel. For me, because of my upbringing, my conditioning, the word jihad, it splashes in my chest with a tenderness. Because to me, the word jihad has an absolutely opposite meaning to what it means to you. To me, it evokes sacredness, holiness, consciousness of God. So the barrier is a lack of understanding between us. When you think the Quran is full of violence, for me, I can refer to those verses in the Quran which talks about peace, compassion, a verse which is reflected many, many times in the Quran. Reject evil with something which is better, so that your enemy becomes your bosom friend. The Quran says several times, to make your enemy your bosom friend is a Quranic injunction. I'm not saying Muslims are listening to that. I'm not saying non-Muslims are listening to that. But it's important we become aware, what Gandhi said, to have an appreciative understanding of the other's tradition. And the truth is, all of us one day will come there. You know, God says, whether you're a sultan or a saint or a pickpocket, this is Rumi's verse, you know, God will drag you in secret ways to the ear, by the ears, towards God. And the last verse in the Quran, in the Hadith Qudsi, means a direct revelation from God to Prophet Muhammad, even without the intermediary of Angel Gabriel, where God says, I was a secret treasure. I was a secret treasure, and I longed to be known. I longed to be known. And so I created the worlds, visible and invisible. So sooner or later, in our lives, in our times, it's bound to happen. And that is good news. With that, I'll end and thank you very much.